Welcome to the Southern U Podcast, brought to you by Darden Archery on the Okayest Podcast Network, with your co-host, Matt Brock, Jeremy Ferguson, and Taylor McMurtry. If you're looking for all things land-related in the Southeast, you came to the right place. Whether it's real estate, habitat, wildlife, or just being outdoors, this is the place for you. Welcome to the Southern U. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Southern U Podcast, where we talk all things land related in the Southeast. We cover topics that range from real estate to agriculture, hunting, land management, and everything in between. And we are known to chase rabbits from time to time, so there's no telling where our conversations will end up. My name's Taylor McMurtry. I am 1/3 of the Southern U team here. Normally, I'm joined by Jeremy Ferguson and Matt Brock. They're two wildlife biologists, wildlife land management extraordinaires, but 'tis the season. The reason they are not here is because they are in different states, planting and burning and all of the things that you could imagine take place this time of year for private landowners. But today we do have a very, very special guest, one that I'm kind of excited about because I've been wanting to get him on for, well, really since we started this thing, and it's just it worked out today at super short notice. But we have the co-host of the Okayest Hunter podcast and the owner of Okayest Podcast Network, Mr. Eric Clark. Eric, thanks so much for hanging out with us, dude.
Yeah, this is cool, man. I'm really happy to see what you've done with the place, so to speak. You guys have done a great job on the podcast, obviously, but social too. And the fact they're giving me two very, very excited is, I don't know what we're going to talk about because I don't own private land. So maybe I'll learn something here.
No, man. So just so you guys know this too, I reached out to Eric and just said, hey man, this is something that we want to start up. Don't know that you would have any interest in this, but we'd love to kind of be a part of what you guys are doing there. And this was kind of, I guess, in the midst of Okayest Podcast Network, just kind of getting off the ground, and didn't. A matter of fact, I don't know if there was Okayest Fisher, and of course, your show, but I think and Upduck, maybe Upduck was there already.
Yeah.
But I think that was the only shows, and we somehow were able to twist Eric's arm and convince him to let us be a part of what you guys are doing. So.
Yeah, I had to have you pitch me on your okayestness because I was like, I mean, you got to be able to like speak the brand ethos a little bit, and you did, and I was like, okay, I think we got it figured out. It was unique because you also have your own marketing shop that you do full time, and you're going about it slightly different than I maybe had like envisioned in my mind with how it would go. But that's kind of how these things go, and being in marketing yourself, like things take shape how they take shape, and you just kind of have to make sure you're massaging it into what you think it'll be. But it's almost never exactly what you think, and I think that's a good thing because you guys have been a great addition to the network. So yeah, I'm glad to have you guys on the network.
No, well, we're glad to be here. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Early on, I gave Eric the sales pitch, and he was like, "Man, this sounds awesome." And then a couple days later, he called me back and was like, "Hey, look, I just I don't know where we would help you guys. Like, I just don't know where. Like, you kind of have your own gear already. You've got branding kind of figured out with what you do. Like, I just don't know if this is going to work just because I don't know if you need us." And we were like, "No, we need you." Like, it's not,
I have this tattoo on my arm.
Yeah.
It's a ratio 51-49, which to me represents give more than you take. And it's just a reminder to not be selfish, because I think us humans have a hard time with that, but I have a really hard time with it. So I have to like work at it actively. So most people would say I'm not, but that's because I work at it really hard. And so yeah, I was like, I don't there needs to be enough for me to offer you guys.
Yeah.
Like I was like, what do I don't want to get in a position where like you're getting more out of this than or like then I'm getting more out of this than you would be getting out of it. That was like I think the concern, if I recall.
Hmm.
And you're like, no, we do need it. I was like, okay, well, this thing's just kind of like a baby right now. We're just kind of starting off. So
Right.
you guys are one of the leading shows on the network, though. I will say that, like, and everything has its own seasonality to it too. I've noticed now that we've been at it for a little while, like a
Hmm.
little over a year, that certain shows will ebb into various seasons and flow out of others. Like turkey season got real hot
Oh yeah,
recently,
sure.
and now I'm starting to see it even like now that we're in the last week of turkey season here, at least in Wisconsin, it's starting to like not be as insane, though still really good. Um, yeah, so it's just interesting to see some of that ebbing and flowing. And ours is kind of like in a backseat right now because it's not deer hunting season. We primarily talk about deer hunting in the
Sure.
Midwest.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's kind of how we are. I mean, I use this term very, very like loosely, but like not viral. We didn't blow up. We don't have
Hmm.
millions of followers or anything like that. But we kind of gained a little bit of traction, a little faster than we probably anticipated. And then we hit turkey season, and it was like a screeching halt. Like, hey guys, like what's happening?
Something
We
break, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I mean, we didn't change our recipe, like what's happening. So um we didn't hit the full blown hit the panic button, but I kind of started to there for a minute because we were like going to NWTF and we did a show with Paul at turkey season and it's like, oh man, I can't wait, this is gonna be great. And it was like turkey season is where things kind of started to trend down for us, even though we're still talking about like turkey hunting and we're still talking about other stuff. But it just makes me feel good to know that that's the case for everybody. I guess it's not
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
us
for sure.
isolated thing. Um, but yeah, I did want to have you on, and if it's cool, our general format. Not that we have to follow anything super strictly, but normally we ask 5 questions, and once we kind of cover those 5 questions, and we wrap things up, call it a day. And I'm sure you've probably heard this story, but that's all based on a class that I had, one of my favorite college courses I ever took. I am a psych major, and so my my favorite class I had was one of the most certainly one of the most odd classes I've ever had, but it was behavior a behavior analysis class, and you would rotate between a class and a lab. Like every one day would be a class day, next day would be lab, and we actually had to train pigeons how to peck a key on a certain schedule to prove that you could shape and manipulate behavior. And the professor that taught the class was a very interesting guy, but that's kind of how our format came from, was because of that class. He would go, look, we are not going to read this textbook. Like, we won't ever read a word of it. If you're interested in learning this stuff, you will do it yourself and you'll do it on your own time. But we're going to talk about real world stuff, and it's like, I'm going to ask you 5 questions. The class is going to answer them. And then the class asks me 5 questions. Then we go home. And so I just love the way that class flowed. And it was always interesting. You never knew what people
Hmm.
were going to talk about. And it's worked out. So it's kind of where that comes from. But if you're good with that, I'll just start throwing some
Yeah, man,
questions
I
your
love
way.
it. I'll be the experiment today. That's good.
There you go. Well, first off, I mean, I know that you have been just podcasting yourself and with Okayest Hunter for a while now. Can you kind of maybe just tell our listeners a little bit of like how did that come to be, and what's the kind of the origin of not necessarily the network, but just the Okayest Hunter as a kind
Yeah.
of a thought.
Yeah, it depends how far back you want to rewind the clock, but it used to be a different name. It used to be called Where to Hunt, which was the name of a GPS app that I developed to help hunters identify occupied and unoccupied land. Well, that got funding from the state. I got a grant for winning a pitch award for being in an incubator. And once that happened, it made sense to like divvy things up. And before, or almost simultaneously as that was happening, OKS Hunter was taking shape. I actually just found an auto scroller tool to scroll the OKS Hunter Instagram. And
Hmm.
like, I think our first post ever was July something of 2019, which is when we like created an Instagram page. And then in doing so, the Where to Hunt podcast was in the Okayest Hunter podcast studios, my way to try to like bring it into the fold.
Mhm.
Once we got that grant funding, it was it just felt like the Okayest Hunter vibe that was living inside of the Where to Hunt podcast seemed to have more, it was resonating, it made sense, and its own social was taking off at a pace that was like outperforming anything else I'd ever seen at the time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, look, to my business partner Tyler, I said, let's draw a line. Where to Hunt's going to be its own entity. And we're going to take that podcast and we're going to bring it over to Okayest Hunter. We've already been talking about Okayest Hunter on Where to Hunt. That podcast is now going to become the Okayest Hunter podcast. So that brand change, which is in a microcosm because we have such a small following. So like we're, Yeti doing a brand change where everyone would freak out or something.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
no one cares. Um, so that was in June of 2020, I think, is when we probably made that switch, which felt pretty awkward because Where to Hunt was really talking about like big buck tactics all the time. And we were
Mhm.
interviewing a lot of big buck killers to get those tactics and stories. And it just seemed like we weren't doing anything that different from what was already being done. Everyone felt like they were trying to do that thing.
Mhm.
And so we were just in the sea of same. We had no real differentiator. And I really believe in doing things different, not better. And when we kind of came up with OKS Hunter, we were trying to scratch this itch of like ending buck shaming that was happening and like relating to people and breathing some humor into the space and like not be so damn serious and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it resonated and it kind of took off. So that's how the podcast, I guess, started. Um, it was awkward in the sense that we were like, oh, well, we can still talk about how to kill big bucks, but like we're about more than that now.
Mhm.
Like that's still part of it, but we want to be much more broad and speak to the everyday hunter that might only have a couple of days to hunt in the whole entire season versus the guys that are killing big bucks. They're dedicated. They might even be doing it for a living or like they might be paid by some brand to be like full on. And these guys are spending countless days, weeks, months in the field. And it's
Mhm.
no wonder they can get it done. Of course, they are really good. But the guy that just wants to go hunt this weekend because he can, or he's only got 3 days to take for rutcation, like who's talking to that guy? Because that guy can't take half of the tactics and distill them into 3 days and have any, like, unless you're delusional, it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
So
For
like
sure.
what is the spirit of the hunt? Why do we really love doing this? So that's kind of, I don't know, the bit of the origin story. And there's maybe a little bit more to it. I'm a domain hoarder, so I had the name Okayest Hunter Park for a number of years. Like it was in the back of my mind. I just didn't know what to call it or do with it. And it really stemmed off of me getting shamed for shooting a doe fawn for my first ever archery deer. And I just happened to be a grown man when that happened. So like people are like, well, my dog's bigger than that. Why would you kill that? That's Bambi. And it's
Mhm.
like, well, because it was my first ever bow kill. And I just happened to be a grown man. So, like, you would assume I would have done this when I was a kid. Well, I didn't hunt as a kid. So I certainly didn't bow hunt as a kid.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of, there's a little bit, there's some roots to it for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to that specific example of like you taking that doe fawn with a bow, like, look, you guys have heard me on this podcast. I mean, you're probably ready to throw up from me saying it so much, but like, that is my game, dude. If give me an excuse to sling arrows at anything, I don't care. I mean, I had a when I graduated college, I had a bow fishing boat. I'd go out, shoot fish at night, and then go find some excuse to fling arrows during the day. Like it doesn't matter what it is. That I love bow hunting. It doesn't make me any better than anybody else. It doesn't make the animals that I harvest any better or anything like that. But like, man, I got no time for people like that are going, oh, I can't believe you shot that. Like, dude, I have a bow, I have a stick and a string in my hand. Like, get off of me. You know what I mean? And I don't, you know what I'm saying? And like you said too, like there are instances. I mean, I know that you personally have had to deal with this being in the marketing space, but it's like I started my business and I thought, okay, I'll be in charge of my own schedule. I'll be able to manage my clients. I'll be able to set aside some time where I can go have some fun. And like, it just doesn't happen.
No,
You just get overloaded. You get behind. You've got deadlines to meet. And
things flare
like,
up at the wrong times. Like, you got to address them. You're,
yes,
you're the bottom line. It's different when it's you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of funny. The guys on the podcast that are, normally here with me, they have extensive wildlife management, land management, habitat improvement experience. And so they're constantly talking about, how to grow deer and, making sure that we take mature deer. And look, I'm all on board for that kind of stuff. That's great. Um, but I'm also not going to, have anybody like bring me down for me shooting a doe when I want to shoot one with a bow and arrow, especially. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so that's kind of the joke is that they're the biologist and I'm the normal guy. Like I get to speak up and kind of take up for the rest of us that aren't biologists, and that sort of thing. So, but that's cool, man, because it seems like I want to say the first time that I saw any Okayest Hunter content was probably 2021 or so.
Yeah,
And
I don't think I asked, like, how did you come into the fold? Like, you approached us, obviously, when you kind of realized what we were doing, but that means you'd had been following us for some time. So, like, maybe I'm curious to hear your POV on it.
yeah, I mean, I just loved the idea of like, hey, these guys are in, I mean, you're in Wisconsin, right?
Yeah,
Like, I mean, that's what most people, especially down here in the South, would consider like big buck territory. Like that's where
sure.
people go to shoot giants. And you've got these guys that live in prime time, territory. They're like, ah, man, we're happy to be able to take a deer. You know what I mean? Like we're not freaking out about age class and antler score and stuff like that. So and seeing some of the humor stuff, like you said, kind of mixing that in, seeing some of the funny stuff, I would share that with some of my buddies that I hunt with and things like that. And it's kind of a small world. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Parker McDonald. He has
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's a great
so
guy. He's
so
done some designs for us, actually.
yeah. I was gonna say Parker is he and I just kind of being in the creative space. He's more graphic oriented, and I'm probably more video and that sort of stuff. But he's about an hour away from me as far as where he lives and in relation to each other. But he and I hunt together some, and I had shown him some of the stuff, and that's kind of I think maybe what got him introduced to you guys and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I was actually working. One of my clients was a coffee brand in just outside of Jackson, Mississippi, and they were kind of wanting to take their coffee and bring it to the national market and kind of not necessarily to compete with the Black Rifles of the world or anything like that,
Yeah.
but just to kind of you know be out there and kind of occupy that same space. And um, I started kind of spoofing, better better term there. Some of the content I'd see from you guys are like, we can probably do some of this with the coffee stuff, and we actually had kind of a collaborative project. It never really became what we wanted it to be. But we kind of collaborated a little bit with Tethered to kind of bring like an outdoor, coffee that had another credible brand. And so I was trying to create content to go alongside that coffee brand and that sort of stuff. And so that's what kind of got me, I
Oh,
guess
yeah.
turned on to the okay
It's kind of
stuff.
cool.
But yeah, man. So I guess okay as Hunter starts to grow, you guys begin to, I'm sure, get some other projects or other partnerships, sponsorships, and those sort of things. What spurred on? At what point did you go? It'd be really cool to start a network to have other podcasts and that kind of thing. Like, was that always the goal or always the
No,
plan? Or
no, it was in like the back of our mind. It's kind of like we have this thing, and what does it want to be when it grows up? And what are we good at? Like what is this thing in terms of like its strengths and how do we serve the market in a very impactful way, in a meaningful way? And uh we're good at podcasting, I think. Not great at editorial. We try to hand at that, and that's a big lift. You need a lot of capital. But we're strong in the podcast side, and we like to talk to people. Greg Tubbs, who co-hosts the OK Hunter podcast, fishes the Great Lakes. He's got a boat that can handle the big waves, so he does a lot of like king salmon, brown trout, like Lakers. He fishes for these big fish. He also lives right by an inland lake where he'll go to a pier right down the road from his house and catch bluegills off the dock. He'll take that same boat in the inland lakes and we'll go, fish for pike and bass and stuff. And then he also travels to Florida well, I think once a year, and he'll do shore fishing, ocean shore fishing. So he's got a
Yeah.
rig for that where he's reeling in who knows what he's going to catch, whatever the
Hmm.
tide brought in. Could be a shark, could be a ray, could be, who knows. So he's got an affinity for fishing, and when hunting season stops, he's like, I am fishing. Like he has a hard time talking about whitetails when it's fishing season. And then
Yeah.
when fishing season ends, all he cares about is deer. So it's just kind of funny. But he's like another buddy of ours, Matt Strime, who owns Weathered Oaks Custom Calls or Game Calls. I feel like I mess up his business name all the time, but it's Weathered Oaks Calls. He makes grunt tubes, turkey calls is his big thing, and a couple other things. Well, he happens to be a really big fisherman too, and loves to musky fish, and is really great at musky fishing to the tune of like he'll forego hunting the rut to go catch muskies up north.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like die hard. Well, the two of them are like the same person. They look similar. They have very like, my rate of speech is really, really fast. I talk a lot. They're a little more like laid back and subdued. Anyway, they were like twisting my arm about we want to start a fishing podcast. I was like, look, man, you know where this goes. It doesn't end. Are you sure? You also are a co-host on this show. Like, if you do this, I just want to know that you're gonna be able to commit to it for at least a year.
Mm.
Because you know what happens when you have a podcast. It just starts to be this thing that you have to feed forever until you decide one day that maybe you're not going to do it. And so I want you to know that I want you to think about it more before you guys do this because you're ready. Like you already, Matt, you have another business on top of your day job. Greg, you're already doing this other podcast. Like,
Right.
okay. So then they thought about it, whatever. And they're like, no, we really want to do it. I feel like I was a dad to my kids. Like, can we get a
Yeah.
dog? Well, dog's like a lot of responsibility. Like it's gonna live for like 15 years, maybe. Are you
Yeah.
sure? You sure? Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll take care of. We'll pick up the poop, all the stuff, whatever. So we decided to do it, and it's awesome. Like it's a great show. I think it's a really cool fishing show because they kind of avoid all of the industry stuff because they just like genuinely don't care about that. So they've had some good compliments from like bass anglers, like, man, you guys never talk about any of the drama in the tournament leagues or the lures, and they're like, yeah, we just like to fish. So it turns out to be a really good show. Um, then Tyler, my business partner, was like, man, I love to pheasant hunt, and I've been learning a lot about waterfowl hunting. I got a couple of buddies that waterfowl hunt and pheasant hunt, and they all have dogs, and I have a dog, and I train dogs, and we should start a podcast because like it would be great to have something. He's like he had a dog hunting podcast before, but he deprecated it because it just was like too much. I was like, well, if it was too much,
Yeah.
then let me do the same thing I did to Greg and Matt. Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
You know what you're getting yourself into. You understand how this works. Like, are you sure? Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. So it was we were gonna call it Ducklander at first, like duck hunting and upland, but
Oh,
that
yeah. Yeah.
name already exists for a guy that makes calls, really good calls apparently.
Mm.
And so when that happened, he was like, "Hey, that's my business name." I was like, "Oh, sorry, man. Like, I'm not in business to like, I'm not trying. I didn't see your business out there. I didn't realize. So like, now that I know, we'll just yield and it's fine." So then we are like, "Yeah, Ducklander didn't really fit the vibe, anyways, of what we're after." So then instead, we just flipped the term. So we call it Upduck, upland and duck hunting.
Right.
I'm silly. So it's the Upduck podcast, and it's Matt Jeske, Jeff Ludicky and Tyler Meaden that host that, and they all have dogs. They all waterfowl and like upland hunt, and they got a good banter and it's a good show. So they were the third, and then Elizabeth Brownell, who's no longer on the network because she is a mom now. She had a baby,
Mm.
and she wanted to hang up the mic to go be a mom, which I think is fantastic. And she's welcome back anytime, like all good stuff there. She asked to join. I was like, huh, I've never had anybody reach out outside of our four walls to
Hmm.
do this. So I was like, well, what do you want to talk about? So we ended up coming with a name for her show, the graphic design, all that stuff, just like we did for Upduck, just like we did for Okayest Fisher. And we ended up calling it the Onset Podcast. And that was a really cool podcast while it was around and she was doing that. And since it still lives out there and it's still alive, but no new shows are coming onto that one. Then I think you guys were next. And it just has continued to have that same exact thing. Then Zach Hansen approached me and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing a trapping podcast?" I was like, "Well, actually, I had thought about it, but I don't know a lot of trappers. I actually had you in mind if it were to come to be, but you approached me, so like, let's
Yeah.
talk."
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what's been happening. And now I think a lot of folks in the network have become really close with each other. Like there's been some friendship spawned out of like just being in the network. I see we have the WhatsApp chat going on, and that thing's pretty vibrant. It's
Yeah. For sure.
popping. I feel like I should be in there more frequently than I am.
Oh, I know.
So,
I'm the worst about replying to stuff, and but yeah, it is cool, man. It's cool that at least from my point of view, it doesn't seem like there's any egos that have like
no.
like everything's been like really smooth and feel like everybody's kind of pushing each other and answering questions and like, hey, how do I do this? What's the best way to do that? And what's worked for you guys and that sort of stuff. So it has been really, really cool to see kind of how that's all come to be.
Yeah, the no ego thing is a big deal. Everyone's just like really self-deprecating and not wanting to shine the spotlight on themselves and therefore always willing to help. And I think it's a really good group of people that we've got rolling with us. And that to me is the most special thing I've gotten out of this podcast networking stuff. And I've always said it's the return on relationship, the ROR. And it's pretty awesome, man. I feel like I've made some good friends in the process of doing this stuff. We've had a lot of late night calls. I think I've been on the phone with you late at night or early in the morning
I
going through stuff.
know.
Chris Wansettler with the Okayest Cook. We jam out, like he's a business owner also and does videography. Like everyone's just doing really cool. He's also an adjunct professor teaching photography. Everyone's doing really amazing things collectively.
Yeah,
And I just that is like a contagion that I want in my life. I want that to be as contagious as humanly possible because, like you said, we're pushing ourselves all in various arenas of life, especially in this category. But yeah, the very organic, holistic way in which it's grown tells me that we're onto something because I've not gone out and actively pitched people to, hey, you want to join our podcast network? Like,
yeah,
we've never done that, and don't have to. I mean, maybe someday we would maybe try to seek some certain people out or something, but there hasn't been a big need for that.
yeah. Yeah, it's cool, man. And I forgot to mention this kind of part of our story, but Zach from Whetstone Habitat. So I
He was
had,
just on recently.
yeah, he was on ours last episode too. And anyway, it's just kind of cool because when I had first started my business, I had done some hats for Brad at Go Wild, and
Hmm.
so out of nowhere, I don't know that I've ever actually spoken to Brad like on the phone or definitely not met him in person, but um, I just get a call out of nowhere, and it's a guy named Zach that just moved to Tennessee, and he's a consultant and needs some merch. And I was like, "Hey, man, forgive me for asking, but how did you find me?" And oh, Brad over at Go Wild said you did some stuff for him. He said you are the hat guy. It's like, wow, okay, awesome, man. So. And so that's how that kind of got started with me and Zach. And then I think maybe Zach is the one who actually said, you need to reach out to Eric. And I said, okay, who's Eric? And he said, have you ever seen Okayest Hunter? I was like, dude, yes. Like, so
That's
I'm
so
pretty sure
crazy.
that's kind of how that happened. But
We were talking to Zach around the same time we were talking to you, and I was like, "Oh, I don't want to like. Let me talk to Zach first, I think, because I didn't want to like tell him, you know, no, because we picked someone else." And so I was
right.
trying to like first come, first serve, have this mindset of like, well, let me just. It's kind of like when you got something for sale on the marketplace, and someone messaged you like, "Hey, I can pick it up," and then someone else is like, "Hey, can I have it too?" It's like, well, I have to check with the first person. If they fall through, then you. Not it wasn't like that with you guys. It wasn't like a runner up thing. It was just kind of like what are you trying to do? And Zach's trying to do something different. He's like, I'm gonna focus on the writing stuff, not the
Hmm.
podcast. I was like, okay, good. So you're not gonna have any issue if we bring Taylor on with his crew because I don't want to like create a weird. I hate drama, man. So I was like, I just want to make sure I'm
Yes.
being candid and upfront with everybody, and it all worked out. And obviously, he was a guest on your show recently too, so that's pretty cool that it
Yeah.
worked out like that.
Yep. For sure. We've got
It's a small world, man. It
it
really is.
really,
And Brad's a good friend of mine, so yeah.
yeah, I know. And, it's cool. I think Zach's going to be a pretty integral part of another project that we've got in the works now. Everybody that's listening to our podcast is probably ready to kill us because we keep talking about it and we haven't released it yet. And it's just like one of those things
It's
where
got to come together. Yeah.
we just have to get it right. Like we can't afford to launch it and it not work. So we're
Sure.
trying our best just to kind of keep it, keep moving forward. And whenever we feel 100% confident in it, then we're going to kind of let it go. Um, but anyways, yeah, it is small world. But I did want to ask with you guys kind of, especially within the network, I mean, it spans a lot. That's kind of why I wanted to have you on anyways, is we say that we talk about all things land related, and like, I mean, we've talked, we talk a lot during hunting season about hunting stuff, but we also talk about, management practices, prescribed fire, like, all this kind of stuff. But I mean, the network covers a whole lot of different stuff. I mean, you've already mentioned like upland and waterfowl hunting, fishing. You've kind of the wild strength, which is a pretty new one, I think, on the network now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, that covers more like health and fitness, wellness
Yeah.
type stuff. Okayest cook. I know you mentioned that one too. So we're cooking wild game, and not just wild game, but you know what I mean, other types of stuff too. So it just kind of like spans a lot. Is there any specific one that's like maybe not on the menu yet that you're like, it'd be kind of cool if we had somebody that would fill this spot, or maybe like a.
Yeah. Yeah, there are. So, I mean, we've applied. So it's interesting because, like I mentioned, it's grown organically and holistically, and people have come to us. But as that started happening, we started to kind of like plot a bit of a course. Like, okay, well, what are we going to say no to or yes to? What is this thing going to turn into?
Mhm.
And one of the things too is like we do have brand partners on the OK Center podcast, and at some point, like we can't keep bringing more sponsors on, or it dilutes the effect for everybody. Our
Sure.
listeners have a poor experience because they're just hearing ads all the time. The partners, and the more of them that pile on, the less valuable it comes for them because it's getting too diluted. And then it kind of like ruins it for everybody. And the whole thing can crumble if we don't get that right.
Mhm.
So we thought, well, having a network is kind of neat because then we can like spread the love a little bit. I think about Waypoint. I think about Meat Eater. I think about Dan Johnson, Sportsman's Empire, and I think there's enough room and like to go around here. I don't know of any other. Working Class has a small network. The Working Class Bowhunter podcast. They have a firearms podcast and a fishing podcast. They might have something else, including their own. My thought is like, how can we be as outdoor centric as possible? And what are all the various activities people do outdoors? And how can we cover that topically, categorically? And when I think about the niche side of things, so like when Zach reached out around trapping, I was like, man, so few people trap, but I think the smaller the subject of the population, the more interesting it actually becomes. So
Mhm.
like I his show is doing really well. Bowyer podcast was introduced to us by Zach. It's about making bows, like self-made
Yeah.
bows.
Yeah.
This show is kicking ass, and it's super niche. Um, so my thought around like, okay, here's the business side of it. The business side is what are sponsors going to look like? Well, I'd like to just get agnostic sponsors that somebody needs a battery for their car, their four-wheeler, their boat, their side by side. Like if we had, a battery company to lay
Yeah.
over the top, we don't have to get romantic about that, but everyone's going to need a battery. And that's one of those products that like it's not sexy. No one cares about batteries. You only think about it when you have to buy one when the
Yeah.
other one fails. And so then you go to your local hardware store or your auto shop or your Fleet Farm bar, whatever it
Yeah.
is. And you stand there and you're looking at them and like none of them mean anything to you. But if you heard one several times, you'd be like, I've heard that on the Okayest, on the Trapper, on the Fisher, I'll just grab this one because I now have some familiarity with it.
Hmm.
That's the reason brands like that can work is because podcasting is primarily an awareness generating tool,
Hmm.
a trust building tool to create some brand loyalty. It has conversion potential, but we're not Joe Rogan. Like
Right. Yeah.
now, collectively, if someone's listening to multiple shows on the network, they're going to hear the same thing over and over and over on the ads that would fall across the whole network. That is great because the brands that play in the awareness phase, like the awareness and consideration phase, they know that they're going for awareness. Those dollars are spent differently. They're not measuring it with like, well, Eric, you didn't sell any of the ABCXYZ trinkets. I can't, like, we're not going to do this. Like, look, that's not the point of what this is. We're here to build trust and loyalty and awareness. Like,
Hmm.
you're going to get conversions that fall out of this, but that can't be the sole focus. So the bigger brands have the dollars and they can play that way and they understand the game better, I think.
Hmm.
It's nothing against the smaller brands. It's just harder for them because their dollars have to be allocated where
They
they
do.
do have an ROI. Otherwise, their business could suffocate and die. And I don't want to be responsible for doing that to another business.
Hmm.
So there'll be great opportunities to have some of those folks on the show to promote and have good conversations, and we can have repeats and we can do giveaways and we can find other ways to integrate. But like when I first started out, we had a coffee brand, um, Backwoods Grind, and that was my first ever
Hmm.
partner we ever had back when it was Where to Hunt, and they stayed on for a little while with Okayest Hunter. But the deal was like we get free coffee every month in exchange. We'll promote you because they didn't have the dollars, and they would have to sell a ton of coffee at a super low, like, oh, I'm doing the stupid thumbs. I was like, wondering what that was.
Yeah, I don't know
Um,
what it was either.
I didn't realize that I had the gestures on. Anyway, like you'd have to sell a lot of coffee at a like clip like that because your margins are different. Your AOV, your average order value is so low when you're buying a $12 bag of coffee
Right.
versus, a $100 battery. Anyway, so there is some strategy around the business side of it, and then on the consumer side, like I think some overland and camp would be great. Those are topics that I'm interested that I think are neat. We added Jared Gomez came on with Okay a Shooter or Powderhorn podcast,
Hmm.
which I mean that guy knows more about firearms than I'll ever. He'll forget more than I'll ever know. It is insane, but his ability to have no ego as he weaves through those topics and to like that's a pretty like cutthroat category.
Hmm.
Anyway, so that's an area we want to cover off on that we need to have the right voice to do so. And so like I think another one would be catfishing as something I think would be really fun.
Yeah.
It's a super niche topic and the people that do it are like super diehard. And I would just love to get into like a few more like super niche things within the larger categories.
Yeah.
I, anyway, so that's when we look to cover off on like what else are you gonna add? Well, I think some overland, some camping, some more niche things. So if there's other niche things and even like land management, what is it? What's like the most niche thing that exists there? That's like a weird foraging be another one. Like
Yeah.
I think foraging is a really fun topic. I have a friend that's really big into foraging and knows a lot about all of that stuff that I'm like, he's kind of asked about it and I've kind of been like, well, yeah, let's talk about it. But like again, you understand podcasts and you know what you're getting into. So like I need your full buy-in on this before we before we sign
Right.
off
Yeah.
because I don't want to do that to you. It's a lot of work.
No, it is. No doubt. There is no end in sight. It's like you just feed the machine for as long as you can possibly feed it, I
Yeah.
guess. But it's funny you talk about the niche stuff and how that works sometimes, and when you wouldn't think that it would. It's just a kind of an oddball story. I can't remember if I've actually talked about this on the podcast before, but um, during COVID, when the world was just shut down, you couldn't go anywhere, do anything, and I'm a big basketball fan. That was kind of my first love, I guess. And then you get to a place to where you can't play any like meaningful basketball anymore, so you have to go find something else to do. And so, anyways, when like COVID hit, like right as March Madness was about to start, and so there was no NCAA
Yeah,
tournament.
you're right.
It was
Yeah.
crazy, and so I was like, I did it as a joke, but I made like a makeshift bracket on Facebook and was like, I'm losing my mind. There's no tournaments. I'm gonna see about breakfast cereal. And so like I just did it as a joke and it like around locally, not like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
nationally or anything like that, but people around here just like ate it up, man. Like no pun intended, but they they loved it, and so I just kind of ran with it. And my wife still to this day was like, "This is the stupidest thing you've ever done," and you've done some pretty stupid stuff before. But we did instead of there being March Madness, we did the Cereal Bowl 2020, and ended up I would do like stupid like commentary on the matchups and just stuff like that, and go live every night when we had games and to see votes. Whoever got the most votes would advance to the next round and all that kind of stuff. And so
Love it, dude.
it ended up getting, I can't remember, like a Facebook group got like, I don't remember, 15, 1,600 people in it. And a local like news station called and like did a
Oh
did a
my God,
spot.
dude, that's amazing.
It was the funniest thing in the world. But we even like I had like screen printed some T-shirts, had shirts made, and sold them as fundraisers for
Super cool.
some school stuff, and like, but that was like super niche, like super
Who would have thought?
stupid,
Right. Yeah.
and but it worked, every now and then I'll just like when March rolls around, I'll just like share something from it from like 5 years ago, and people are like, "Oh man,"
I remember that.
yeah. So
It's crazy.
yeah, it can work no matter what it is. If it's micro stuff will still work sometimes.
I heard of I don't remember who told me this. I'm trying to think. I think it was someone else in the industry. They had an app a long time ago, and it's long time ago, it was deprecated, but it was like some technology that analyzed photos that would organize them in a social manner or something like that. So like it would recognize deer and just automatically organize stuff. Well, that was an afterthought to go after an outdoor hunt category, because what really happened is it created a database. Anytime someone took a picture of a caterpillar or a moth, it was moths. A moth,
Oh,
they would categorize the moths. And there's these social components. So like this app grew, and that was a true driver of it first, is that it had categorized all these species of moths, and there's this huge moth community. I was like, what do you mean
what?
moth community? And he's like, dude, you don't understand. Like, we're talking millions and millions of photos of like moths.
What?
And they had this unique database that recognized moth photos and could categorize them by like species, kingdom, phylum, whatever it is. And so I was like, man, maybe we should start a moth podcast. Like,
Yeah, that's crazy. No joke, man. That would be so niche that I would be a little worried. But that's wild, man. I guess there's something for everybody out there. I guess.
apparently so.
Oh man. Um, but yeah, that's that's crazy.
I mean, I don't, as a marketer, I've long followed Gary Vaynerchuk since like 2013 or something like that.
Yeah. Mhm.
And he's always said, like, back in the day before social is what it is, like, go start a podcast about Smurfs
Yeah.
or cereal brand, like, pick something. And he's like, there's an audience there. Someone's gonna, like, there's a lot more people than you could possibly imagine that care about the one really weird, specific, odd thing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I guess there's multiple schools of thought with some of that stuff, but I remember when we started ours, we met with a very successful entrepreneur, kind of consultant guy, and we just kind of told him like, this is what we want to do. This is kind of what we're doing. I think at that point we had done like, I don't know, 15, 16 shows or something like that. And he was like, "Yeah, you got any metrics for any of that stuff?" And so I told him, and he was like, "Well, yeah, you need to listen to the market, and the market will tell you
Hmm.
if this is going to work or not." And it sounds like, based on what you're telling me, that this is a need or this is something that the market wants, and like, I mean, I guess that's a good thing, or whatever. But then you
Yeah.
have guys like Gary Vee. He's like, "Look, it doesn't matter. Just do something." And
Well, Gary Vee also says the market is the market is the market. And he's one to talk about feedback loops and, like, the market will tell you. Like,
yeah,
you don't subjectivity shouldn't matter as long as you have objective, like, truth in the data you're getting. But to that end, yeah, go test and validate and see if the market will accept it.
hmm,
So, and then you'll have your answer. That's how we operate, man. Like, at least with our content, that's how I operate.
yeah, no doubt. But yeah, dude. So, I mean, for you guys with Okayest Hunter specifically, like, is there anything coming up that you guys have been either been working on, or is there something that you maybe have coming up in next fall, or any like out of state hunts or anything like that planned for what you guys are going to be doing?
We'll see. I mean, we did our first out of state film and hunt last October, and that just debuted in March, I think. It went live. Was it March? Dude, time is I don't know how to measure time anymore apparently, but we launched a film called Forked Chicken.
Yeah,
Bit of inside joke. You'd have to watch the film for that title to make any sense, but it was a Blacktail Oregon hunt. We sent Greg and Derek there to do a hunt with a friend of ours, Lyndon Lauren, who wrote the book The Hunter's Hellspan. So really cool guy.
yeah,
Invited us to come out to Oregon, and it was a really neat hunt. So we were like, we should do more of that. So I think we're gonna sunset our seasonal show that we've done, like the TV show.
yeah,
That's like The Office, but deer hunting. We'll still have a season 4 that comes out this year, but we're not going to film for a season 5. Um, the the actual ROI just isn't there. We're paying like 10 to 15 grand for videographers, and there's none of that's coming back in any meaningful like way. And that's been 4 seasons, coming up this year. So like we gave it a good college try, but we don't have the budget to stick with it for now. So we're
mhm,
gonna probably take that same spend and just use it for video in a different way. We're gonna purpose it intentionally and specifically for social because we do have an ROI there. So you'll just see more of our faces on social than having to go to YouTube to watch a 12-minute show.
Hmm.
Um, so that's on the horizon. So films we like, that was good. A little bit different strategy for videography. And we're still doing Foam Fest. That's on the calendar for the 9th of August this year in Wisconsin. Is a 3D archery event that we do. There's a desire to get this podcast to do out of my basement.
Yeah.
So we have our eye out for properties that could work. They have to meet a certain locale radius for this for to make sense and have some attributes to the building where we can actually shoot our bows. So like any old office space isn't going to do.
Yeah.
Um, so we're just keeping an eye out for that stuff. It'll have to be pretty opportunistic. Like if we catch something that hits right, then we'll probably jump. And then with that, then Upduck and Okayest Fisher can have studios as well that we can combine. And I think there's a little bit more we could do with that. So that's something that may or may not come to fruition, but like it's in the back of our mind, and we're actively trying to just think about it, but we're not pursuing it super hard because there's not a lot of like places to do what we want to do in the town we live in.
Hmm.
Like we just kind of got to like watch for it. That's kind of like I don't know, adding a couple more shows potentially around gear. I'm trying to be selective, so I've had some others approach, and I just keep hemming and hawing about it because I just am not sure that I'm seeing the value that we're gonna bring, and it's too duplicative of what we already have. And
Hmm.
I would say that we've spent the last year and a half building the frame, and now we're focused on like bulking up. So I think we're gonna start. We just want to drink our protein shakes for the next couple
Right.
months and just take care of the folks that we have, like you guys, and do the best job we can for everybody before, like, I don't want to get stretched so thin on this. Quantity is not the name of the game, it's quality for us. So it's not about more, it's about like, how can we do the best job we can? So one of the things we thought about is like, how can we host an event for all of our podcast hosts? Like, what would that look like? Can we
Hmm.
piggyback off of something else where people are already going to be there? Can we do a dinner? What can we do? We probably can't afford to like fly everyone, pay for a location, pay for like that
Right.
isn't going to happen. But what can we do to mitigate the cost as much as possible to bring our network together? Because, like I mentioned earlier, we love the people part of this. And I think it would be really incredible to have all of us in the same room at the same time. I think that would just be an incredible time.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's something we're trying to figure out too. We're trying to figure stuff out on limited funds uh, and doing this part time. So
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, man. I mean, I'd love for something like that to happen. We have thrown around the idea of doing like an off season, like a hog hunt or something like that here
yeah,
down here somewhere where we might be able to get, our sponsors and or even like people from the network or whatever just to come down, spend like a 3 day, like a long weekend or something like that, and go chase pigs around when it's not deer season, it's not turkey season. You know what I mean? It's kind of that dead period where you can hunt pigs here
yeah.
365. So,
You're not going to be taking away someone's like prime time that they care about. Like you're not going to get me to leave for the whitetail rut. I'd be like, well, I'm not going to make it.
no,
Like,
yeah, imagine, yeah,
like
we're going to
that.
do this in the middle of, whatever, the
Yeah.
end of March or start of April and try to get Paul down here. Like, no, not unless there's a turkey to chase around.
Yeah,
So,
exactly,
so,
exactly. Yeah, and
uh,
there's a lot of us, so it's a good chance like we wouldn't get everybody to participate, but if we get the mass majority, like I just think it'd be a really cool time and we could build some event or some agenda around it too. Like let's talk about collectively what we can do here. I've shared books in the chat about like you talked about the psychology stuff, and
mhm.
I've been learning a lot. I have a communications degree, but I also like haven't done shit with that in any like professional sense. So I have a lot of like the good frame there, but I'm trying to fill that in a little bit more. So reading tons more about communication, asking open-ended questions, interviewing, trying to get that better because I think more quality will come out of like how we carry ourselves when people actually do tune in.
Mhm.
Um, so all that stuff is important. I feel like I'm missing something. We have a lot of new merch coming out in fall. Tariffs have kind of made that a little bit more challenging. We had just finished getting our supply chain built up in China. Go figure. Um,
Preach.
so it's unfortunate. And like, look, then people are like, well, you should just build here. It's like, well, it's not that easy. And also, like, there's certain things that China can do that we A can't, or B can't do for nearly the price that people already complain that our hats are too expensive. Like,
Dude, look, you're
you
not.
want to see them quadruple in price? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
you're
we'll
not
build them
telling
here.
me anything. Like I try to explain it to my clients, like for broadside. It's like, hey, I want. You see this patch, this woven patch on this whatever Matthews hat? Yeah, I want my logo. I want it to look just like this. Like, okay,
Oh,
well
good luck.
there's literally nowhere in the United States that can do this. So
Yep.
we can do them, absolutely, but it's coming from overseas, and you just got to
Yeah.
be okay with that. Like, and most of the time, if that's the look that you're dead set on, they get it. But yeah, I mean, we do.
And you can do some things here, but man, like,
Yeah,
it's not scalable for us as a business. Like,
mhm,
there has to be some meat on the bone for it to be sustainable. Otherwise,
right,
like, what are we doing? So
sure.
that's a whole other side of the business that we manage that does well and like is growing. But I don't see that becoming like, it's not like quit your day job money. Even at six figures, it's not, because the bottom line of that, by the time it nets out on the bottom, your like your gross take home is nothing. We're actually underwater most of the time, which is
Yeah.
shocking that you can generate that much revenue and still not actually make money. I'm like, what the F?
Right. Believe me, I got destroyed on my income tax stuff this year because
Same, bro.
I
I
thought
owe so much money.
I had. I mean, I had several thousands of dollars just in subscriptions for the video stuff that I do, just for, for different softwares and different whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought, just that alone, not counting all of the merch, that's what people don't understand about that. If I sell a shirt to someone or a hoodie and it's $25, well, like I have to buy the hoodie, and then we have to print the hoodie, and then we have to ship and deliver the hoodie. Like, there's
There's
not
cost
much
of goods.
left.
There's all, yeah, there's
Yes,
not.
you know what I mean? And
And that
so,
doesn't even factor in maybe advertising too, which has to be part of that equation.
yes, and so it's like, man, by the time, hey, we made we pulled in well over six figures this year, but oh man, you should have spent more money, so you don't have to pay so much in taxes. Like, golly, it wasn't
There's thresholds
anticipating
to that
that.
stuff too. So people are like, oh, go buy a truck. It's like, yeah, but I'm not spending 40 grand to save $2,000.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. It's
I don't
like,
just write off. I don't still get to write off the whole thing. Like, what do you think this
no.
is?
And my dad, I mean, he has a point, but that's his thing. Is he's like, look, Taylor, the government does not want you to have money. They don't. So you can either give them your money or you can go buy something. And you're like, either way, you won't have the money. The money is gone, but
Yeah, that's a
you can
good
at
point.
least have something, in place of what you are giving up. So I wish I had taken his advice and bought, another camera or like something, because gosh, man, I got blasted this time. But
We can talk about that later. Yeah,
yes,
that's a
but
challenging thing. Like, this stuff isn't easy, especially like for us. We're doing it in our spare time, which my day job is fully well aware of, and it's all good. Like, there's no problem. But
yeah.
I can't imagine what we do if we had all the time to do this. I don't know. I actually don't know what it would look like. I actually often ask myself if I could do this every single day, all day for like the 9 to 5, so to speak.
Hmm.
There's plenty of work to do, but I would probably get most of it done pretty quick, because right now it gets done in the micro moments in the early mornings and late nights. And
Yep.
like, it feels like it takes a long time to do so because I don't have the dedicated time to go do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like even our podcast, it really stemmed from I was doing all of Jeremy's marketing because he's a realtor too. He's a real
Hmm.
estate broker, and so like I was doing graphics and social and that sort of stuff, and I was like, look, man, I mean, this is working because his company had taken notice and said, hey, who is doing your stuff? Because it seems to be having getting a little bit of traction around here, but and I told him I was like, we can keep doing that, but I was just like, I'm constantly like, I feel like I have to do 50 things to feel like I'm doing anything. I just can't. I can't fixate on one thing. I've got to just have a whole lot of irons in the
Yeah.
fire. And I just told him, I'm like, what would it look like if you had a podcast? And I really was trying to sell it on like it's his podcast and I would just produce it for you. And he was like, you're right, that is cool. We should do this together. Like
It worked
we
out pretty
should,
good.
yeah. And it was like, talk land, and you can talk, land covers a lot of different things and that sort of stuff. And of course, people would be interested in hearing about that kind of stuff. And then that's kind of how this whole thing got rolling, was really just to be a content factory for the real estate stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to work. You guys put out good stuff. Have you ever talked to a land surveyor?
Like have them on as a guest, or
Yeah, I actually get confused on what it is I do, but like I only think about because like one just purchased a building near my house and like now they're in there and I'm like, what do they do? It's not a landscaper, they're surveyors. Like they're taking those
yeah,
things out on tripods. It's always the guy you see on the side of the freeway that you're like, what the hell
yep,
is he doing?
yeah,
He's like
yeah,
he's
shooting the lines,
getting
yeah,
plat book information and like property lines. I know as a landowner,
hmm
property lines are pretty important and sometimes they're not accurate. So
oh,
every now and
they
again you gotta make
are,
sure they're up to date. That
yeah,
could be a
and
fun topic.
yeah, we've talked. We had one of our sponsors is First South Farm Credit, and we've had them on talking about, like, tell us your horror stories of trying to get a land deal closed, and somebody throws a wrench in it or whatever, and they talked about a lot of times it's a neighbor has a discrepancy over the boundary, and like, well, the only way we're going to settle this is to to
A
get
surveyor out there.
yeah, get a surveyor out there and shoot the line and tell us where the line is and stuff. So a lot of times that's it. And I know one, actually I know two surveyors, and their job, what they tell me their job is primarily, is to be a peacekeeper. It's
Go
like
figure.
like
Jeez.
we show up, and it's like, I mean, one guy in particular, he's like, every day I get up, every morning, I'm like, Lord, please let me keep the peace today. Help me to be to diffuse any animosity or any kind of like resentment that could be harbored here. And, well, my line is right here. That's where my granddaddy had it. And that's where, like, well, I don't know what to tell you, but here's the documents from the courthouse. Your granddad's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just, people don't
People don't like
like
to hear
that.
that.
So,
Yeah, they don't.
but yeah, I mean, that would be a good one too. But, well, Eric, I know I've kept you for a while, man. I was going to get, just in closing, one thing we always do before, I meant to do it at the beginning, I just kind of forgot. If there's any shout outs, or if there's anybody, any show, or any business maybe that you've worked with in the professional career, anything like that you want to shout out, we always kind of do just, weekly shout outs and show some people some love on the podcast before we get off of here. But is there anybody in particular that you want to
I don't
give
know,
shout
all
out to?
y'all. Just go check out all of the shows on the network because you
Yeah.
guys are what make it really cool. So like I think that's the shout out is if you wanted to get a look at the whole network in totality, I think okayesthunter.com has a page that's Okayest Podcast Network, and on that page you can see every show
Mhm.
laid out. So if you find something that you think you would like to listen to more about, or there's some sort of outdoor niche thing or season that uh, kind of scratches your itch, like go check it out. We got some good people, like we had mentioned, rolling with us, and I think that's worth checking out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'd say too, kind of just same thing that Eric just said. There's a lot of different people that are a part of the network that um, it's not just that they're different niches, but they're like different personality types too. And
Yeah.
it's really cool because I know that I have a specific personality type that I just kind of gravitate toward, no matter what they're talking about. And then there's some that I don't. And so far, of all the shows that I've listened to and checked out on the network, there's not really anybody that I'm like, I don't think I can listen to this guy again, or this lady, or you know what I
Yeah.
mean, like whatever. Because I
I'm
mean,
that guy for myself.
like
Like I'm never gonna listen to this episode. No offense. I just don't want to hear myself talk.
no, you could. But last thing, I guess, before we get out of here, give us your. No, you got that monster buck on the wall there behind you. Can you give us kind of a Cliff Notes version of how that hunt played out for you, and kind of what went into that, and was that something that did you know that deer was there, or just total surprise? Kind of give us the
Yeah.
rundown on how that went.
Yeah. I do a lot of like scouting my way into hunt. I enjoy hunting the rut because I like the uncertainty because I don't have a lot of time to scout throughout the year. So I'm not going in with like a full understanding of how the deer are doing what they're doing at the various times that they're doing what I need them to do.
Mhm.
I make general assumptions like this is bedding, this is food, they're going to be going to these places, or this is a funnel, there's doe here, there'll be scent checking, I play the wind, blah, blah, blah. And I've gotten good at some of that stuff over the years, or better. and I seem to be able to get in the red zone quite a bit, but I'm very poor at like punching it into the end zone because something inevitably always happens at the final hour, in the last minute or whatever. This guy, a buddy of mine was building a house on a property not far from where I'm at, and he's got 16 acres along a river. And he's like, "Yeah, man, you can hunt it. Like I've been asked a bunch. It must be hunting season." I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm sure you have been asked a lot, but like fortunately, we know each other." So
Yeah.
he's like, "Yeah, my uncle is gonna hunt it the following day, so like just hunt it this day and not that day." I was like, "Okay." So then I had scouted it once, knowing I had permission, and I just kind of like looked around a little bit. It's not a big plot. I was like, "Okay, well, if I hunt a morning, like at least I know what tree I'm gonna get into, and I if with the wind being this way, like this is a property I'll hunt." So it worked out. I got in the tree and made a ton of noise getting up there. Didn't feel like it was smooth at all, and I had very little confidence in the spot. But I was like, "Well, it's a rut. Might as well just be sitting." Right at first light, tons of grunting and a lot of crashing around in the woods, and I was like, "Oh shit! Like this could happen. Like
Hmm.
they're right here." Well, I never saw the buck that was grunting. The doe that buck was chasing eventually popped out, and what I had noticed is this guy was across the river, still on the same property, just across the river, and he was watching and he was listening to all this action happening. But he, once he saw the doe, it kind of like he's like, "Oh, she's real. She's over there, and she's in heat." So I watched him cross the river, which was probably one of the coolest things I've seen a whitetail do because it was pretty deep water in that spot. So he just, it's a really cold November day, and this dude just went right into the river like it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Shook himself off, and then full seek, nose down, boom, into the brush he goes. I assume he chased the other buck off. So that makes me think that maybe the other buck wasn't super big. I didn't hear any rattling antlers or there's no fighting. So I just
Hmm.
wonder if it was like a young, immature buck that was just pushing this doe around. I didn't think this guy was big. If you look at him profile, his tines aren't very tall. So I just thought I was like a 6 pointer or something. I didn't really think
Really?
much of it. He popped out where I expected him to. I was already at full draw. I had already ranged because I was super bored all morning, ranging everything just to be triply, quadruply positive, like I knew where I'd be shooting at. And he started making a rub. He was all fired up and pissing, like he was, felt like he was pretty angry.
Yeah.
For the first time ever, I let out a meh, like loud, and then I was like, "Oh my God, he's looking my direction." So then I felt like this timer started going off, and there's like a little, guy on my shoulder saying, "Shoot, shoot, shoot!" And I was like, "Hold on, what do I?" I let it rip, hit him, heard him run off, and I was like, I don't know what happened. It's like, I mean, I know
Yeah.
I hit him, but like, I don't know really anything other than that. It was a 20-yard shot. I was elevated. I hadn't realized it, but from the Bucks' point of view, I was not silhouetted at all. The tree was kind of alone, but a little bit further in the distance, there's all this brambly, tall stuff in the background, and I happened to be like, there's no way he realized what that sound was, or I don't think he ever pegged me.
Hmm.
So I probably had more time than I thought I did. I got down, looked at my arrow, and uh, I had missed a buck a couple days earlier, and I also cut my finger open on that hunt at full
Oh.
draw. And at full draw, my peep sight tubing broke. So I drew back, cut my finger open on my broadhead. My peep sight thing broke, and I shot because I was like, the deer was like 15 yards in front of me from the ground. So I was like, I think I had him in before that happened. He hadn't moved. I let it rip. I hit a branch, and an arrow, who knows where it went. The branch just busted up and never hit the deer.
Oh.
And I'm left there bleeding. My bow is broken. I'm like, so then it was a couple days later, this happened, and I was like, totally redeemed myself. Like, couldn't believe it. I got my
Yeah.
bow fixed, obviously, before that, and got my finger all stitched up. And um, so, then anyways, I get down, get the arrow, and I call some buddies, and I kind of tell what happened, and it had gut on it, but it was because of the angle.
Exit.
Yeah, he was quartering two, and so it went in and hit vitals perfectly, and then exited out in like a really low spot because it was such an
Hmm.
extreme angle down. So it got gut on the way out. But I was like, oh no, it's a gut hit. And everyone's like, you're gonna have to let him sit, dude, for a while. He died right away. I just didn't know it. But he had crossed the river. So eventually my dad showed up. He was hunting a property not far down. He got a really big buck the next day, which is pretty cool because we both got pictures with both our bucks, and that's
That's
never happened.
cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
And so yeah, Greg came, and my dad came, and we tracked it to the water line, and I was like, oh no, he crossed. Like that feels like maybe not a good thing, like I thought he was gonna die like right here. And I didn't have any waders or anything. Greg had hip waders. He's like, well, I'll cross first. I'll toss them back to you. He gets across the other side. He's like, there's too much overhang. I can't toss these. They're not going to make it. I was like, oh, man. So I stripped down to my underwear.
Oh
I
no.
tie my pants around my neck and take my boots off, carry those. And what I did is freezing cold. My feet were numb by the time I get over there. But I was like, well, I'm not going to put my. Greg crossed the river. He sees the deer dead. He doesn't tell me.
That's amazing.
Tells the camera that he's holding that he's like, we got a dead buck. We got to kill it. But he doesn't know it yet. So I get to the other side and he's like, got this shit eating grin on him. And I see a huge pool of like just the best red blood you could hope for. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's good. Like, that's what we want to see. He's like, yeah, what else do you see? I was like, what do you mean? Like more blood? And I look and I'm like, oh my God, is that him? Is he dead? Like, I couldn't believe it. I was self-doubting the whole entire time. So I'm like, at this point, I'm just walking over to the thing because I was so freaking excited. My dad's like, I'm like, Dad, he's dead. He's dead. He's dead. So before I could, my dad's like, well, I'll drag him across. He's like, no, no, I'm coming over. Like, it was like the scene from Talladega Nights. Like, how do you get to his underwear so quick? Also, my dad's in his tidy whities and he's crossing the river.
That
So
is
here we are,
awesome.
father and son in their underwear, like taking photos with this deer. And my dad's like, I thought you said it was a small six. I was like, well, I thought it was. Turns out it's 140, or sorry, 143 inches, I think,
Yeah.
on the back of the napkin, or
That's awesome.
136, somewhere in there. There's a six or a four that I'm getting wrong, but obviously I don't really care too much. But it's the biggest deer I've ever gotten. It was a big deal. I was pretty excited about it. So it was like instead of ground shrinkage, it was like ground growth, and I couldn't believe it. And we dragged it back across the river and dragged him out. I got to take it to my uncle's who had like an old scale from a manufacturing plant. We weighed him, and it was just like a really cool thing that my dad got a big deer the next day and we got to do this photo op and he was there for me in his underwear. It's just freaking just an odd
That's so funny.
scenario. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Photo of a lifetime. People are like, why are you guys in your underwear? What really goes on out there? It's like, well, yeah.
Don't worry about it, man. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't. I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I got a good friend of mine that I played basketball with in high school, and we've known each other forever. And he's just now in the last like 3 years really gotten back into like, hey, I think I really want to hunt again, and never really did it in his 20s or anything like that. And so I've been trying to get him, take him somewhere and him get a deer and with a bow. He killed some good deer with a gun, but has never
Yep.
killed them with a bow. And so a couple of years ago, we drew a special opportunity area. It's like a lottery thing where you get drawn and get a chance to hunt some public land for a designated period of time. You're the only one that gets to hunt it. And so, anyways, we go on this hunt, and it was just, to make a long story short, it was chaos from start to finish. It was like just access. Nothing went right. We were running late. Like just all the stuff, everything that could go wrong went wrong. And this is or I'm sorry, the second weekend of the season too in Alabama. So it's the second weekend, or I'm sorry, like the third weekend of October. It's blazing hot, and long story short, I've just kind of given up on trying to scout this spot because you're supposed to be stationary. After I think it's at 3 p.m., you can't move anymore. You're supposed to stay, in
Hmm.
one spot. So,
Interesting.
well, it's really just you can walk anywhere you want to. You just can't
Yeah.
drive after
Okay.
3. So I'm just like, I don't know. There are no food plots. Everything's dead. We've got no rain. Like it's just a dust bowl. And I'm like, there's a bunch of white oaks along this road. I can count 7 of them where I'm standing right here. I'm just gonna jump up in a tree. It's 3 o'clock. Whatever. This is the first evening that we're there. First hunt. I hop up in a tree, and here comes this 7 pointer. They have to have at least 3 points on one side to be legal there, and I'm like, there's no chance this deer is a legal deer. You know what I mean? And it comes up
Yep.
and stops at 26 yards and turns its head, looks around, and I'm like, that's a 7. Like he's dead. So I zip one through him, and it runs off in the bottom and dies. And I text Kyle and I go, hey man, I shot one. Oh, cool. What'd you shoot? And like, it's a doe. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll be down, at dark, and I'll come over there and help you get it. And I had already found the deer and stuff, but I got him, and he's, we're trailing blood and all this kind of stuff, and we get down there to it, and I'm like, hey, what is that up there? And he was like, oh, oh man, that's a bug. I think we found somebody else's deer, you know. Stuff just went, over his head. I was like, Kyle, I was just messing with you, man. I shot it. And he was like, oh, sorry, man. I'm super gullible, it was a
That's
funny
great.
story we talk about all the time. But anyways, Eric, man, thanks so much. Again, that was late notice, and you have already done your show tonight and got a million other things to do. But I appreciate you taking the time and
Yeah,
hanging
you
out with
bet.
us. And hopefully we can keep on keeping on. I hope there's a day where we can go weekly on the podcast, but I don't know. It is a lot to try to get all of us together, and we don't do a ton of remote podcasts. We try not to. We try to have everybody in person best we can, but
Yeah, it's a
uh,
good experience to have
it's,
people in person. I agree and like that model a lot. So it's harder to do though.
yeah, it is. It's tough, but as long as you'll have us, we'll be around. I reckon.
Yeah, well, that's great because I hope to do this for a long time. We love it.
Cool, man. Well, you guys listen. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please like, share, subscribe, all the things. We would really, really appreciate that. Check out our YouTube channel if you want to see more than just the podcast. We have some hunts there. We've got some other management stuff that we've done there, some site visits and consults, that sort of thing. So if you're into that, kind of the habitat improvement and management, check out our YouTube channel. It's at The Southern U. And all of our social handles are the same thing, the Southern U. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm sorry, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And also check out the Okayest Network. There's all kinds of shows for just about everything, from shooting, cooking, um, health and wellness, kind of the wild strike. I want to check that one out myself, but
She's a great
um,
gal. She's really doing some really cool things. So yeah, Wild Strength is great. Western Territory is another good one if you're into
yes, yes, I'm glad you mentioned
Western
that. I
stuff. Like
almost
yeah,
forgot.
I had 8 groomsmen in my wedding, and these are close friends I've known most of my life. And anytime I started getting like past 6, I started forgetting who else I was missing. So
Yeah.
I forget which podcast to mention often, and I feel bad because I'm like, man, if any of them listens, they're like, man, Eric sucks. You don't remember me? I'm like, look,
Yeah.
don't take offense. After like 6, I don't know what's going on anymore.
For real. Yeah, you guys check it out and check out the Okayest Hunter. I just love the message. It's your tag, it's your hunt. Hunt the way you want to. Don't apologize for it. Um, we are very much of that mindset here. Um, the only thing that we ask is that you don't make excuses. If you shoot a deer, don't go, well, he wasn't the biggest deer, and he wasn't the oldest. Like, you shot it, be happy, be proud of that. It's
Hmm.
something to be proud of. So we certainly do appreciate everything that you guys do for the network and for us. And if you guys need us for anything, you let us know.
Cool.
Awesome. We'll see you guys on the next one.